Are you looking to know what your AV provider needs as an event host or event organizer? Well, this is part 2 of a series that I'm doing where I'm breaking down the 5 aspects that I think you need to think about and put into a list to get the most accurate quote from your AV provider and avoid those last minute, I don't knows, oopsies, budget impacts that nobody likes to see on site at the event. Before we jump into it, I'm Logan Clements. I'm a freelance event producer based in Seattle, Washington, but I execute events here and all over the world. I do want to remind you to like, subscribe, turn on that little notification bell so you get notified every single Monday when I drop new videos. I'm also the co-host of the Better Events podcast with fellow event pro Mary Davidson. We dive even more into some of these topics. We've had some AV pros on our podcast and interviewed them. We've shared our experience as event producers. We talk about what a run a show is, what's a stage manager, nonprofit fundraising tips, you name it, we have a podcast episode on it. So listen wherever you listen to podcasts. So as promised, I am breaking down what feels like a simple but complex question into 5 parts. And so in part 1, I talked about my first one, which is how attendees will see and hear your content. Linking above, linking below for you to go back and watch that. In this video, I'm going to be tackling point number 2, which is Scenic. And then in my next videos, in part 3 is going to be speaker tools. Part 4 is live streaming and recording. And part 5 is schedule. And these 5 videos combined is going to be all of the essentials that your AV provider needs to understand what you're looking for with your event and help you avoid those last minute additions, surprises, and sometimes disappointments when you have that miscommunication. So talking about Scenic, what do I mean when I say that? I mean 2 things. I mean lighting and stage design. So when you're talking about lighting, this is one that can be something that is super simple, and it can also be something that is super complicated. I feel like that really epitomizes this whole question of just what your AV provider needs. But lighting, I will say for most basic events, you want lighting in what we would call a stage wash, meaning you want the lights to light up the stage so that your speaker can walk around most, if not all of the stage, be nice and lit so everyone can see them, and that's called a stage wash. Now, for a more complex show, you might want dynamic lights and lights that move. When we say dynamic, move around the room. You know, if you're doing an awards portion or something, you're going to want movers is what they call them, but you're going to have lighting that kind of moves around the room and is very dynamic. You might also want lights behind the stage as your backdrop or around the room. A lot of planners are very familiar with uplights. Those are a very simple addition to any AV quote to add just some color around the room. Those are not moving. Those are often not color changing, or they can be, for a higher price point. But I feel like stage wash and uplights are kind of the 2 most basic things I see. But really thinking through what's all the lighting that you need at your event. Maybe not even just in your ballroom or your main room, but what do you need in your breakout rooms or your cocktail hour or your arrival space? Just thinking about what kind of lighting you need. And we know I love to talk about jargon, so I'm going to link to the video that I did, and I'll put it in the show notes, all about what a gobo is. But essentially, it is a go-between optics, or think of it as like the projected logo somewhere. That is something that I feel like so many event organizers and event planners forget about because it's a nice element to add to Scenic to your event, but it is something that's so small and kind of off on its own that people forget about it. So if you are going to have gobos, yes or no? How many of them do you have? So that all plays into lighting. And in part 1, I talked about with screens and sound system where rigging comes into it. So lighting also gets impacted by rigging. If you are going to have rigging in the room, that gives you more flexibility to hang more lights, have more lights that you have control over. Or if you are not doing rigging, this is where you're going to have floor supported lights. So on stands. Again, thinking about what your attendees can see, you have to think about the positioning for where do you put those lights to put a stage wash on without making sure that you're blocking anybody's view. And that's why rigging, hanging things from the ceiling, is a really good way to avoid blocking any of your attendees' view. Lighting on its own is something that can be very inexpensive. I've had some nonprofit clients rent their own lighting, but then they have learned, oh wow, it is hard to set up and figure out where to place these on these stands so they don't block anybody's way. So your AV provider is going to want to know maybe what's a must-have for your lighting. And then you could also say, I'm also open to seeing this is what I must have, but maybe also give me a quote for something in addition. So I had one client where we had up lights were in addition. They didn't want to do it at the end of the day. It was too much, so they cut it off the budget. But you can ask for these things for your AV provider to game out maybe what would it look like to have movers, dynamic lighting, so we can really have some fun. And lighting is another one I think is so underrated as an event producer to really transform a room. If you're doing a basic breakout, full lights on, the venue lights, that's totally fine. But if you're really looking to make an impact with a general session or an award show or a party of any kind, you will be surprised how much lighting has an impact compared to having more screens or something like that. And my second part here of Scenic in my part 2 video is stage design. This can be something as simple as we have a stage and you're just figuring out, is the stage provided by the venue? That is often the case. Sometimes, though, it is not. If you need custom sizes or other events are happening in the venue and they only have a certain number of risers, they call them, you put these risers together to build however long or wide of a stage you would like. So it can come from your venue, but you want to make sure and check with your venue person. If not, your AV company can sometimes provide this or find somebody who does. And again, knowing, do you want a simple stage, has black skirting around it, or are you looking for something custom or more dynamic? And this is where, again, big budgets, you're using bigger production companies that can actually render and make you an image of exactly what it will look like. I've seen ones that are as cool as, big and round to just super big so the speaker can really just walk around the room. I've seen cool kind of runway aisles that send the speaker more into the audience. There's a lot of creativity that you can have. But it is really helpful for your AV vendor to understand what you're thinking about, even just the size of the stage you're looking for. And if you're like, Logan, I don't know the answer to these questions, that's fine, that's okay. Then just say you're looking for the basic stage setup. And beyond just the stage itself, there's also Scenic in terms of maybe you have specialty lighting or a specialty backdrop. What's behind the speakers while they're talking? The most simple of events will have pipe and drape. Now, that doesn't always come from the venue. Sometimes that is another vendor that you need to bring in. I've also had clients who've used LEDs behind the speaker because that enables you to have a really cool picture up there. And it's something you can change. It's dynamic. I've seen print backdrops. I've seen some people who've rented florals and rented plants and things to put. So you're trying to think through all of that. And while your AV vendor isn't the person who's going to provide the plants for you, all information is really helpful for them to make sure that they understand the vision for the event, what you're looking for. You can also ask them, what have they seen? What are they doing? Especially if you're someone who only does events once or twice a year. What is something cool that they've seen with another client that they think could be a good fit for your event? Scenic is a place that can be so big and so broad and so creative that I have found this is another place where things all of a sudden people are surprised by how much things cost and or are scrambling the week of or the day of to figure that out. And my last pro tip for you will be, if you're having a stage, make sure you figure out whoever is providing the stage also provides stairs. And deciding, do you want stairs on both the left and the right? Do you need any center stairs? That's just another question I feel like on site I am constantly talking with people about shifting the stairs and figuring out where they are. So if you're thinking about stage and Scenic, make sure you also think about stairs. And that brings me to part 2 of what your AV provider needs from you as the event host and the event planner. I am so thankful that you've been watching, and I will see you in part 3. Bye.